Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Aditya Shah, and I am a junior at Emory University, well, now a senior. Um, and I'm a community leader at Romero Mentoring and an equity research analyst at Romero Research. Today, we have with us Josh, who is an incoming summer analyst at Oaktree Capital Management. Congratulations on that. Great, great achievement, Josh. How are you doing today?
Doing great. Yeah, doing well. I'm over here in SoCal, just off UCLA's campus. So typical SoCal weathers. Sun's,
Perfect.
shining and typical 70, 80 degrees out. So yeah, things are great on my end. Thanks for
Couldn't be
having me.
better. Couldn't be better. So with this segment, we have decided to, change the structure of this conversation a little bit. We at Romero Mentoring, think that education should be more interesting, should be more fun, should be more engaging. So what we've changed is that we initially, instead of diving straight into business, we have an icebreaker question to make you feel more comfortable, to make myself feel more comfortable, and to just engage the audience a little bit more. So, my first question to you, Josh, as an icebreaker question is you have your own late night talk show. Who'd you invite as your first guest? Now, take a minute to think about that. And then, this is a serious talk show.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting question, and a really good question too. I think if I can invite anyone, I might have to turn back the clock a little bit. I would have loved to have a man by the name Alex Bourdain on my show.
Oh,
Renowned chef, unfortunately passed away a few years ago. But a legendary cook had such a great personality and was an
huh?
amazing man. Has a great I think TV series called My Life in Food. I'm
Oh,
pretty sure that's the name of it. Highly recommend it. Food's also something that I love everything about food, cooking with friends, trying new restaurants, just sharing a meal with family.
yeah.
And I feel like just everything in that show and about his life is really interesting. Unfortunately, he passed away a few years ago.
That's sad.
But if I could turn back the clock, maybe have him on the show. But I highly recommend looking up some of Alex Bourdain's, both his books as well as some of the shows he's
Yeah.
in. But yeah, that's probably who I would want to have on.
Yeah, I'm a foodie too, so I'll probably be in the audience while you're conducting the show. Uh, so, now driving straight to business. You know, please walk us through your professional journey, including any campus involvement which you might have at UCLA, and long-term and short-term goals, so that the audience has a little bit of context about what we're going to discuss further.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a sophomore at UCLA. I guess I'll start my freshman year. I came into UCLA as an economics major, and was sort of interested in finance just because my dad had previously worked in finance throughout his own career.
Mhm.
And coming into UCLA was trying to explore different areas of finance, figure out if things like consulting, equity research, investment banking, private equity was right for me.
Uh-huh.
And I joined a club, my winter quarter at UCLA called Bruin Hedge Fund. And I think it was really instrumental joining that club. Being an econ major, not taking those finance classes, was
Yeah.
really helpful to get that outside learning in kind of in those campus involvements. So joined um, that club, and it was phenomenal experience. Felt like investment banking sounded interesting to me. I was paired up with a mentor
Uh-huh.
who is going to be interning at Houlihan Lokey,
Oh, nice.
and absolutely loved hearing about that from him, and wanted to try out investment banking. My freshman summer, I guess some other campus involvements, just joined a lot on campus. Joined
Uh-huh.
student government, working on their I guess finance committee,
Mhm.
doing that, as well as also kind of right from the start of UCLA, joined the basketball training program for the men's and women's basketball
Oh, wow.
teams. Absolutely love that so
Uh-huh.
far.
Yeah.
So kind of joined a lot of on campus right from the get go. And then my freshman summer, going through Romero Mentoring, doing the Romero Capital internship, absolutely loved it. And then this past fall, actually worked in an investment bank, worked lots of hours, kind of sporadically too. I was supposed to start off only interning a few days a week, and
Mhm.
before you know it, it was assignments every single day. The bulk of my internship was focused on a capital raise, which,
Uh-huh.
which I really enjoyed, and getting
Yeah.
that transaction experience under my belt. But absolutely loved that internship. That kind of solidified my interest in investment banking.
Uh-huh.
Around a similar time to the start of sophomore year, got some leadership positions. So on the executive board of Bruin Hedge Fund now,
Oh, wow.
as well as got a leadership position in UCLA's Business Society on campus. And then had an opportunity for this upcoming summer with, got connected with some of the recruiters and HR over at Oaktree. And, couldn't pass up working, in private equity with them. For those of you who don't know, Oaktree is a massive private equity company specializing in their distressed debt fund. So
If you
they
don't
do a
know
lot of
Oaktree,
distressed debt
then you
investing.
probably don't know private equity. That's what
Sure, right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And they were founded by a legendary investor named Howard Marks, who's, a legendary investor ever since the 90s, even before that. And kind of looking to the future, kind of beyond that. Interested in investment banking, actually going through recruitment right now.
Oh, wow.
Had a few super days recently as well. So hearing back, or I guess waiting on a few offers and kind of juggling between those. So not sure exactly where I'll end up between LA or New York based off those. But yeah, that's kind of a brief run through of everything.
Great
right.
cities.
Yeah, definitely.
I absolutely love LA and love New York as well.
Definitely.
And funny story. I also came into Emory as an economics major and was deciding between economics and finance. So I decided to double major by the end of it in finance and economics. And you talked about basketball, and I'm a huge basketball fan. In fact, I love the LA Lakers.
Oh wow, interesting.
So I'm waiting for the game tomorrow between Lakers versus Golden State. It's going to be a fun game.
Right. Yeah, it'll be super exciting to watch. I'm super stoked for it.
Yeah, 100%. So moving on, what you mentioned that your dad kind of helped you, get into finance and was like the first influence. But other than that, what made you choose finance, and why was it you worked at an investment bank and you're still, kind of recruiting for it? So why is it that you decided to, move from an investment bank to a private equity and now still recruiting for investment bank? You just want to keep your options open, or is it because you kind of like something about investment banking which other professions do not offer?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess to answer your first question, coming to UCLA doesn't have a undergraduate business school or a finance program. So a lot of the learning is through the clubs, which, for some people, maybe some people learn better in the classroom, others, learn better just learning on their own. I personally really enjoyed it, being able to kind of learn everything at my own pace and learn through just like mentors in the clubs and getting reps in like that. So I guess my primary interest in finance mainly, blossomed under, I guess, Bruin Hedge Fund when I joined that club and just learning a lot through that. I guess to kind of touch on the second question, when I had the Oaktree opportunity handed to me, and I can shed some more light on that later, but it was an opportunity I couldn't really pass up. For sophomore summer, I ended up with a few offers. One was in venture capital, two were at investment banks, and then one was with Oaktree. And I've been a fan of Howard Marks since I was probably 10 years old, reading some of his memos, some of his different books. And I just couldn't pass that up. But still, I guess, interested in investment banking based off, the learning that took place in my own club and off that prior internship this summer, just deviating off that, just based off, wanting to work for a corporation founded by someone who I've been reading about for, I guess, a decade now. So that was kind of the deviation right there, deciding to work in private equity. It was just, I guess, basically being a fan of the company. And, still having a slight interest in private equity, but hoping to remain in investment banking for next summer as well as for I guess at least start of my career.
Yeah, that's great. Investment banking and private equity both are, really, really lucrative and kind of great jobs which have transferable skills. But yeah, great, good for you, man. Like you, as a sophomore, if you can manage to do that, like it's really great. So talking about Oaktree Capital Management, can you briefly explain about your role at the private equity firm?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a new rotational program that they're starting. It started this year, and it's a rotation across various teams across their finance and investments groups. So I guess the bulk of it is focused on what you conceptually would think about what is like distressed debt private equity and working in there. I guess the specifics, just rotating across their finance and investments team. So a few weeks on each group. But yeah, that's kind of, a little bit about the role.
Yeah.
Yeah, happy to shed some more light if need be.
100%. So for those of the people in our viewers who do not know what distress debt is, do you mind like briefly explaining what the whole concept and terminology is?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess what Oaktree does is, being a private equity company, and just private equity in general, buying out a company, taking them private, buying them out with leverage.
Uh-huh.
The term leverage buyout comes where, and what Oaktree specializes in, they do traditional private equity, and they
Yeah.
have funds, specifically dealing with that. It's just their largest fund, and most well-known fund is their distressed debt
Okay.
fund. And with distressed debt, it's essentially operate, or I guess investing more in the debt market instead of focusing on equities or in the
Yeah.
securities market, and focused on buying companies that may have gone through restructuring, gone through a chapter chapter 11 bankruptcy,
Uh-huh.
and using leverage to buy those companies and turn them around, and then focusing on your MOIC multiples or IRR,
Uh-huh.
based off increasing that equity, which is tricky, but I
Yeah.
guess seen as more lucrative depending on the company, just as there's
Uh-huh.
already little equity, with a Chapter 11 bankruptcy, or these different types of distressed companies. But yeah, just basically doing traditional LBOs and private equity with companies that are facing different forms of bankruptcy, or I guess just liquidity shortages.
Yeah, I mean, perfect. That sounds super interesting. I mean, you're probably going to get a lot to learn during the
Oh,
summer.
definitely.
I
Right.
mean, distressed debt, and actually, kind of because of COVID, so many companies have actually filed for Chapter 11 that you probably will be working on a lot of companies, a lot of deals. So that should be really really exciting for you.
Right.
I'm
Definitely.
getting excited by the kind of work which you're gonna get. Uh, so, going forward, can you provide more insight into your interview process? And you mentioned that you have had a couple of super days, and you were interviewing for investment banking also. So, what was the striking difference between the interview process at a private equity firm like Oaktree versus an investment bank?
Yeah, definitely. I think with Oaktree, a lot of the focus is on a lot of the focus was on fit. So the interviews, weren't. Or I guess I can touch on more just private equity shops in
Uh-huh.
general. I've also interviewed and gone through some super days with other private equity firms, but a lot of the process with these sizable private equity firms I've encountered is, a lot of it will be focused on fit, primarily in the final rounds, but then those first couple phone calls, couple Zoom interviews, those first and second rounds are purely technical,
Uh-huh.
and a lot of them are focused on doing a paper LBO, and that's your interview and
Yeah.
that's it. Um, and a paper LBO, if anyone doesn't know what that is you'll basically be given a list of assumptions, and typically they'll ask you to just calculate your internal rate of return,
Uh-huh.
or your money on money multiple,
Yeah.
and that's kind of it.
Yeah.
And if you get those right, it's great. Let's go to the next round, and if not, you're kind of done.
See ya.
Um, right? Yeah. So typically a tougher interview process, but once you get the hang of it and the reps,
Yeah.
and they're not too difficult. I guess comparing that to investment banking interviews, depends on the bank. For
Uh-huh.
investment banks, some of them will hammer in on technicals. I've
Yeah.
had I recently went through a super day, where it was 2 hours,
Oh, wow.
and structured into 4 different interviews,
Uh-huh.
and each interview was 10 minutes of behaviorals, typical. Like they
Yeah.
would just run through the resume,
Uh-huh.
ask about certain lines on my resume of my
Uh-huh.
deal experience, and then the next 20 minutes would just be technicals, and
And
then repeat that 4 times.
yeah.
And then I've had I had another super day, um, this past week, where it was almost entirely behavioral. I think I
Oh.
got asked almost like a market sizing type question, and then
Uh-huh.
just a few quick, I guess, 3 statement questions,
Yeah.
for accounting, and that was kind of all technical. So it kind of depends. Investment banking,
Uh-huh.
a lot of the smaller boutique banks will focus heavily on technicals.
Yeah.
But that was kind of the biggest difference that I saw, where a lot of these private equity funds would hammer it on technicals and then ease off on them,
Yeah.
and then investment banks, it just depended on the bank. Some of them would be very behavioral and just kind of fit-based interviews, and then others would be, technicals the entire time.
100%.
So it kind of depends, but that's just what I noticed.
Yeah, 100%. Like even with me, like I also interviewed for a lot of investment banks, and initially in the first round there was typically behavioral questions coupled with a couple of technical questions. But going forward, it gets really really tough on the technical, especially if you're recruiting for boutique investment banks, as you mentioned. Boutique investment banks really really focus on technicals, and the top big bulge bracket firms typically look for more for fit because they can
Right.
sort of train you. But boutique investment banks definitely go for a lot of technical questions. So going forward, what do you think helped you prepare the most in terms of experience, past experience, for these interview processes which you just had, in terms of technicals, behavioral, everything? So what professional experience really helped you, get your foot in the door?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, um, I guess in terms of professional experience, my work at Bruin Hedge Fund helped,
Uh-huh.
throughout the entire interview process, just in terms of my own learning and understanding the technicals. But I'd also say the actual Romero Capital internship helped out a
Uh-huh.
lot, just in terms of getting reps in, getting comfortable with financial modeling and that sort
Uh-huh.
of thing. Where, in in my recent interview where I had that market sizing question that I mentioned, in that question, they essentially, asked me to build a bottoms up revenue model
Oh wow.
on Zoom, just pull up Excel and just
Uh-huh.
build it out for a quick service restaurant company,
Uh-huh.
which is something that, we did under the Romero
Yeah.
Capital
Yes.
internship with Domino's.
Uh-huh.
And it was something where, I was super comfortable with it. It felt like, second nature to me, and it felt super easy, and it was something where they gave me an hour to do it.
Uh-huh.
And, I wrapped it up in 30 minutes, and they
Oh
said,
wow.
like
Yeah.
I got everything right for it.
Uh-huh.
And not to like brag or anything,
Yeah.
but that was just because, under the
Uh-huh.
Merrill Capital
Yeah.
internship, it was a lot of financial modeling and a
Uh-huh.
lot of reps in under that. So I think
Yeah.
that prepared me for, more of the actual analyst work,
Uh-huh.
and being fully prepared for that. Outside of that, my investment banking internship, I think, solidified my interest in investment banking and just helped, solidify my career path in general.
Uh-huh.
But I would say that, the learning under Romero Mentoring and Romero Capital just helped getting the reps in and feeling comfortable with a lot of financial concepts, and definitely, accelerated my growth,
Yeah.
and has, helped out tremendously.
Yeah. I mean, in my experience at Romero Mentoring, I've gone through I made like 13 or 14 financial models. So by now, I mean,
Right.
it's like second nature. You want to make
Yep.
a revenue model for any company, any industry, you got it like locked on the lockdown. So that's really good. So, since Romero Mentoring is like a paid program, how did you convince your parents, to pay for such a program? And what do you think Romero Mentoring offered that, other prep platforms like Wall Street Prep or CFI did not?
Yeah, definitely. I would say that, um, for me, kind of convincing them was, a lot of discussion about kind of, a forward-looking, career path.
Uh-huh.
And most of it has lined up pretty well so far.
Yes,
Looking at,
100%.
can learn from this here, springboard it into another
Uh-huh.
internship, which I did for the fall,
Uh-huh.
and then, using those two experiences, hoping to lock down something for the sophomore summer, which I did,
Yeah.
and then, told them the goal in mind would be, investment banking offer for junior summer,
Uh-huh.
and, kind of sifting through a few of those right now, and hoping to, probably sign on here within the week.
Uh-huh.
And yeah,
Yeah.
it kind of followed that path so far.
Uh-huh.
And, it's been great. I think that was the main thing that convinced them, just kind of, having
Yeah.
a level-headed, grasp on what I wanted my career path to be. And, everything's worked out that way so
Yeah.
far, which I'm super thankful
Parents should be
for.
proud of the investment. I mean, the ROI is looking great right now.
Right. No, yeah, definitely. And then what was the second part of that question?
Sure. So, I mean, what do you think Romero Mentoring offered that other
Gotcha.
platforms like Wall
Mhm.
Street and Prep Program and like CFI doesn't offer?
Right, definitely. I would say um, it's situated pretty uniquely where, it's a lot of material.
Uh-huh.
Um, First off, a lot of training sessions, a lot of reps in, and I think for, whatever you want to do, private
Uh-huh.
equity, equity research, anything within finance, um, unfortunately, you can definitely, cram for interviews and
Yeah.
cram for, case competitions, that sort of thing. But I think when you're really trying to actually sit down and learn something and become more proficient at anything within finance or just anything in life, it's going to take.
Yes.
And I think with what Romero Mentoring does and does a great job at is giving you a lot of materials and giving you, plenty of stuff to stay busy with over the duration of time.
Uh-huh.
So going through that and the internship took me around 6 months.
Uh-huh.
Most of it was in school,
Yeah.
but throughout the duration of it, was always learning something new every day. Always, getting reps in with different
Uh-huh.
financial concepts, running through DCFs, LBOs,
Mhm.
building all of those as well.
Full
Going through the
strategy.
mini merger, full merger models,
Mhm.
and then actually, modeling out these companies, building, these huge Excel
Yeah.
documents, creating pitch decks,
Yeah.
30, 40 slides,
Uh-huh.
and becoming fully comfortable with that. So I think what it offered was, a heavy emphasis on the learning as opposed to just learn everything as fast as you can
Yeah.
and just become instantly
True.
prepped for interviews. And, Romero mentoring and the internship, definitely helped prepare me for the
Uh-huh.
interviews, but I think it also actually taught me skills that will be useful beyond just, securing the job and
Sure.
will be helpful in not only getting a full-time return offer, but I'm sure will help me tremendously once,
100%.
actually hitting the deck after
Yeah.
graduation.
100%. I completely agree. I mean, like, if you like build like so many models, it kind of becomes like second nature. So even if this
Right.
interviewer recruiter asks you like a different sort of question, you know how to answer that, which other prep programs might not teach you, because now that you've actually gone and sat down and actually worked through so many models, you know the ins and outs of it. So it definitely helps.
Definitely.
And yeah, so, now that you are decently exposed to the level of detail and intricacy like this finance field requires, how would you grade the work which clubs and organizations in schools like UCLA, like Bruin Hedge Fund put together in comparison to the normal industry standard? And how do you think these clubs can improve?
Interesting. Yeah, I think one thing that UCLA has that is a little bit of a drawback is because it's a public school.
Uh-huh.
There's, I mean, thousands of people studying econ alone,
Uh-huh.
lots of people interested. I guess they're freshman year and trying out new things. So these clubs, one of the unfortunate things is they can't take a lot of people, and I know this is something that's similar across the majority of
Uh-huh.
public schools across the U.S. Just there's a lot of people, and it's kind of hard to manage clubs of um, a
Yeah.
couple hundred people.
Uh-huh.
So the clubs are smaller. It's harder to get into. It's a little unfortunate that that's the way that is.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things that um, UCLA clubs do well is that by the time you're a sophomore, recruiting for investment banking, you're fully prepared for everything. Talking with some of the people at UCLA's club in particular.
Uh-huh.
Um, some of them are, some of the brightest individuals that I've met in my
Yeah.
life so far. And everyone's, incredibly prepared. And,
Uh-huh.
it's every other day that you're hearing, oh, this person landed, an offer from this boutique. Oh, this person's, got the fast track super day invitation from Goldman.
Yeah.
And then it's basically every other day that you're hearing,
Uh-huh.
something like that. UCLA, though, unfortunately, kind of freshman year, everyone's figuring out what they want to do. Everyone
Hmm.
will be like, oh, I'm interested in consulting,
Yeah.
investment banking. The clubs, unfortunately, do filter that down.
Uh-huh.
So by the time recruitment happens, at least for investment banking, there might be, um, you know, 50, 60 people recruiting for investment banking.
Uh-huh.
And UCLA's grade sizes are,
Yeah.
6, 7,000.
Uh-huh.
So it does filter things down a little bit.
Uh-huh.
It's a little unfortunate that that's the way it is. So I'd say, clubs, at least UCLA, other public universities could work on that.
Mhm.
I don't know how feasible that is just because, it's hard to manage larger
Yeah.
size clubs. But I think that's also why Romero Mentoring is great.
Yeah.
Because, at UCLA, there's a lot of learning taken in those clubs and
Uh-huh.
a lot of, recruitment is done through those clubs. So, having that outside resource is definitely helpful, to supplement that learning.
Yeah, 100%. I completely agree. I mean, if suppose imagine if like a freshman comes into a club and has the resources to, has the resources which Romero Mentoring and other outside, prep programs offer, that his or her learning curve would be tremendous, and that person would be
Right.
ahead of the competition. Because as a freshman, if you come in with the skills which Romero Mentoring and other prep programs teach you, That's incredible. Like you're already set on a journey, and you could probably recruit another person for Oaktree Capital Management going forward now.
Right. No, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so that's great. Just to wrap it up now, since we are a little short on time. Last question is, what advice do you have for incoming freshmen and sophomores, who are interested in pursuing careers in finance, whether it be asset management, investment banking, consulting, anything. So, what advice would you have, now, since you're doing so great in your as a sophomore?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I tried to do my freshman year, which I think really helped, was you know trying as much as you can, and doing that from the get go of
Uh-huh.
college, whether that's exploring things within finance, exploring different clubs. I mean, I looked at helping training basketball, like our Division One basketball teams, and still do that. I started in student government, just trying out a lot of different things. I think is super helpful, and also a lot of fun when you get to college for the
Yeah.
first time. I think specifically for finance, exploring things, just doing your own research online primarily.
Uh-huh.
I think going through, reading through different books, reading about people's experience online, is definitely a helpful place to start. I like in my own research, I researched a lot about asset management specifically, or other types of investing roles, and figured that my interest didn't lay there, at least for a job right out of
Uh-huh.
college. But I think one of the other helpful things is reaching out to upperclassmen and
Yeah.
hearing about their
I think
experience. You can read as much as you can, but
it's
when you're
huge.
actually face to face with someone, grabbing coffee together, and they're telling you about the work they did in a summer analyst role and seeing them light up about everything,
Yeah.
it's a lot of a different experience, and
Uh-huh.
I think in a positive way. So I would say starting out as a freshman, definitely try to explore other things outside of just finance.
Uh-huh.
Kind of figure out who you are as a person, and just meet a lot of new people, and explore different opportunities that whatever your campus has to offer. But definitely within finance, try to reach out to a lot of upperclassmen and just network with different people, and really try to focus in on what you're interested in. I think that definitely pays dividends in the future, especially when you're interviewing.
Yes.
If you might be interviewing with an investment bank, and I've had this in the past where I've gotten every question right in an interview, in a final round interview,
Uh-huh.
and maybe I just wasn't excited enough about that specific
Yeah.
firm, or about that specific role.
Uh-huh.
And it comes off in an interview.
Yeah.
It's pretty easy to tell
Yeah.
if they're genuinely interested in that. So if you're genuinely interested about field and finance, and you figure that out through your own personal research or talking with upperclassmen, it's not only gonna help you be excited to prep for those interviews and learn as much as you can, but it's also gonna come across in interviews, and you'll do great regardless if you're genuinely interested
Yes.
in that role,
Uh,
and in that field. So I guess that's kind of my advice.
yeah.
Just try as much as you can, learn as much as you can, and definitely utilize just who and meeting other people, and try to I guess just learn as much as you
Maximize every
can from the get
opportunity.
go.
Yeah, I completely agree. Couldn't agree more. So with that, I think we come to an end to this alumni chat series. Again, thank you so much, Josh, for coming and
Yeah,
participating
of
in this
course.
series. And stay tuned for another episode of our alumni chat series going forward. And thank you for watching, everyone.